My name's Julia Monroe. I'm a captain in the U.S. Air Force, and I've handled some pretty chaotic days. Emergency landings, medical evacuations, hurricane rescues. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the text that shattered my world. It was a Tuesday morning, base operations meeting, fluorescent lights humming, everyone buried in logistics reports. My phone buzzed on the table. Normally I'd ignore it. But this time, something made me look. The message was from my sister, Rebecca. Come get her. We're boarding now. For a second, I didn't even process it. Then the second text came in. She needs to learn a lesson. My throat closed. My 8-year-old daughter, Lily, was with Rebecca, supposed to be boarding a flight to Orlando for the family trip I couldn't join because of work. I stood up so fast my chair slammed backward into the wall. Everyone turned. Captain Monroe? My commander asked. I grabbed my keys and laptop in one hand. Family emergency, sir. I'll explain later. And I ran. The drive to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport is about an hour from base, but that day it felt endless. Rain was coming down in sheets, wipers barely keeping up. My mind replayed that text over and over. Come get her. We're boarding now. Was this some kind of sick joke? Rebecca had always had her moods, but this was Lily, my only child, my reason for breathing. By the time I reached the airport, I was shaking so hard I could barely park. I left the car half-crooked in a no-standing zone and sprinted inside. The terminal smelled like coffee and wet carpet, normal, everyday airport chaos. Except my daughter was somewhere in it. Alone. I rushed to the TSA desk, voice breaking. My daughter, 8 years old, she was left here alone by my family. Her name's Lily Monroe. The agent blinked, called for a supervisor. Within minutes, 2 airport police officers appeared. Their calm faces made me feel worse. Officer Martinez asked for my phone. I handed it over, screen still showing the text thread. He read it slowly, his jaw tightening. Ma'am, this looks like abandonment. Do you know which gate they were boarding from? Delta, Orlando. They left maybe 20 minutes ago. He radioed dispatch, gave a quick summary. Possible child endangerment. Need eyes on unaccompanied minor, female, approximately 8. We jogged down the terminal together. My boots echoed off the floor. Then, halfway to gate B17, I saw her, a tiny figure sitting on a bench surrounded by 2 officers, shoulders shaking. Backpack on the floor. Lily! She looked up and ran straight into me. I dropped to my knees and caught her, holding on like I'd never let go again. Mommy, she sobbed. They left me. Everyone left me. My heart just broke in half. I know, baby. I'm here now. You're safe. Officer Martinez crouched down beside us. Ma'am, we've detained the flight crew and informed TSA in Orlando. The adults responsible will be questioned when they land. I nodded, unable to speak. In the airport security office, I learned the rest. Rebecca and my parents had booked themselves first class. Lily's ticket was economy separate seat, no guardian listed. When the gate agent asked who'd be flying with her, my mother reportedly said, "She's fine. She's just dramatic." When Lily started crying about sitting alone with strangers, they told her she was being a baby. Then they boarded the plane. They left her there. I'd like to tell you I screamed or broke something, but I didn't. I just went cold. Military cold. The kind where everything inside you shuts off so you can function. Officer Chen handed me a blanket for Lily, then asked for my statement. I walked them through everything, how Rebecca had offered to take Lily on a family trip since I couldn't get leave. How I'd given them $4,000 in cash for airfare, Disney tickets, hotels, food, everything. I trusted them, I said. Chen looked disgusted. Ma'am, they took the money and still stuck your daughter in economy? And then abandoned her? Yes. He shook his head. You should know this is criminal. We'll be filing charges for child abandonment and endangerment. When the words criminal charges hit my ears, I felt both vindicated and sick. My sister wasn't just cruel, she'd committed a felony. Hours passed in blur. Lily refused to let go of my hand, flinching every time someone opened the office door. At one point, Officer Martinez bought her a juice box and a cookie, and she whispered, "Thank you, sir." It nearly broke him. Finally, his radio crackled. He listened, nodded, then looked at me. Your family's been detained in Orlando. They're being questioned now. I exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. They'd face consequences. Finally, I carried Lily back to the car. She fell asleep before we left the parking lot, clutching my sleeve like I might vanish. Her breathing evened out, and for a moment I just sat there, watching her in the rearview mirror. She looked so small. When we got home, I tucked her into bed, then sat on the edge for a long time, listening to the rain outside. My hands still trembled, but my thoughts were sharp now. Rebecca hadn't done this out of carelessness. She'd done it on purpose. And the worst part? I wasn't even surprised. The signs had been there my whole life, I'd just chosen to ignore them. When my husband died in Afghanistan, Rebecca told me, "At least now you'll stop pretending you have it all together." That should have been the moment I realized who she really was. But I wanted to believe family was family. Now, sitting in that dark room beside my sleeping daughter, I understood something new. Family could be the enemy too. My phone buzzed again, dozens of missed calls, texts, voicemails. My mother, my father, Rebecca. One message popped up. "Dad, don't blow this out of proportion. Family doesn't turn on family." I stared at it for a long time. No, real family doesn't leave a child crying in an airport. I powered off the phone, looked at Lily's small hand resting on the blanket, and made a silent promise. This ends here. No more excuses. No more silence. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a declaration of war, and I'd spent my whole career learning how to fight the right way. So, that's what I was going to do. The rain didn't stop that night. It hammered the windows until the house felt smaller, like the storm was closing in. I sat in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee I wasn't drinking, replaying Rebecca's voice in my head, that smug, cutting tone she always used when she thought she'd won. Growing up, I used to think my sister and I were close. We shared a room until I was 16. She was the pretty one, the one who knew how to charm teachers' boys and eventually our parents. I was the quiet one, the one who wanted to fly planes instead of fitting into their small-town expectations. Dad used to joke that Rebecca could talk her way out of a speeding ticket, while I could talk my way into trouble. Mom called her our steady one. They called me the wild card. Translation: Rebecca was easy to love. I was complicated. When I joined the Air Force, nobody said congratulations. Mom's exact words were, "Julia, no man wants to marry a woman who salutes before she smiles." Rebecca laughed. That same laugh still rings in my ears when I think about it, sharp, dismissive, soaked in envy she'd never admit. It wasn't like I meant to outshine her. I just worked harder. While she went to nursing school, I spent 12-hour days in training, proving I could lead missions without breaking down. I got promoted faster than expected. I was respected. And Rebecca? She hated every minute of it. She used to make little jabs when we talked. "So, you get medals now for leaving your kid behind?" Stuff like that. I'd roll my eyes, tell her she was being dramatic, and hang up. But now, sitting there in my quiet kitchen, I realized every one of those comments had been a warning sign. The next morning, Lily woke up early. She padded into the kitchen with her blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. Her eyes were swollen, hair tangled, but she smiled like she was trying to be brave. "Mommy, are we in trouble?" "No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong." She nodded like she didn't believe me. "Aunt Becky said you care more about the Air Force than me." It felt like someone punched me. "That's not true, Lily. That's never been true." She looked down. "Then why didn't you come to Disney with us?" "Because Mommy's job keeps food on the table," I wanted to say. "Because Mommy was trying to make sure you had a better life. Because your aunt is a manipulative, jealous mess." Instead, I just said, "Because I thought I could trust her." Lily sat quietly, chewing the corner of her blanket. "I don't want to see her again." I didn't answer. I just reached out and pulled her close. Sometimes silence is safer than promises you can't control. Later that day, I called my parents. Dad answered on speaker, his voice flat. "We heard what happened. You're making a big deal out of it." "Dad, she left my child in an airport. She was overwhelmed. You should have been there. Maybe this was the wake-up call you needed." My jaw locked. A wake-up call? She abandoned an 8-year-old. Mom's voice chimed in from somewhere near the phone. "Rebecca said you've been distant, Julia. Always too busy for family." She thought she could traumatize my daughter to make a point? That's what you're defending? Watch your tone, Dad snapped. You don't talk to your mother like that. I almost laughed. Maybe if you'd taught Rebecca a little about consequences, I wouldn't have to be the one doing it now. I hung up. No yelling, no crying, just cold clarity. That was the moment I knew I was done protecting their version of family. That evening, I sat with my laptop and opened the folder I'd been avoiding, the one with old pictures of me, Rebecca, and our parents. There was a photo of us as kids, both in matching 4th of July shirts. Rebecca was holding a sparkler, grinning at the camera. I was in the background, eyes on the sky, watching fireworks. It hit me then we'd always been looking in different directions. She wanted to be seen. I wanted to see further. After Daniel, my husband, died overseas, she visited for the funeral. Everyone brought food, flowers, pity. Rebecca brought judgment. She stood in my kitchen and said, "At least now you'll stop pretending to be perfect." End quote. I remember staring at her across the counter, too tired to argue. She was jealous even of my grief. In the months after, she called once or twice, always with that same undertone. "You think you're better than me because you wear a uniform." I ignored it because I didn't have the energy to fight. I was raising a daughter alone, managing deployments, barely keeping my sanity. So when she offered to take Lily to Disney, "Let her have fun, Jules. You need rest." I wanted to believe she meant it. I transferred the money, sent Lily's suitcase with little notes in every pocket. I thought it was a peace offering. Now, it all looked like a setup. That night, I found Rebecca's old text thread, scrolling back months. There were hints messages I'd brushed off. "Rebecca, you know, kids don't forget being ignored." Me. "She knows I love her." Rebecca, "Love doesn't mean much when you're never around." Howitt. I remembered exactly where I was when she sent that the base gym, 10 p.m., exhaustion in every muscle. I'd smiled at my phone, thinking she was just being dramatic again. I never thought she'd turn those words into ammunition. I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair. My body was in that kitchen, but my mind was back at the airport, Lily alone on that bench, clutching her backpack, waiting for someone who wasn't coming. It didn't feel like a misunderstanding anymore. It felt like revenge. A twisted kind of revenge born from years of resentment, jealousy, and that warped Monroe family logic that said pain is how people learn. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. If Rebecca wanted to teach lessons, she was about to learn one herself, the kind backed by law, not guilt. The next morning, I packed a bag for Lily and drove her to a friend's house on base, another single mom, Sergeant Harris, who'd offered to watch her. Harris didn't ask questions, just hugged me and said, "Handle it, Captain." When I got back in my car, I opened my email. The subject line glared back at me. Incident report, child left unattended, at ATL. Attached was the official police summary, already filed with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and the JAG office at my base. This wasn't just family drama anymore, it was federal. My heart pounded as I hit reply, and typed the only sentence that made sense. Proceed with full investigation. Then I hit send. For the first time in days, I didn't feel powerless. I didn't feel like the abandoned one. I was doing what I was trained to do. Follow evidence, stay calm, and fight smart. Because in my world, there are no lessons without consequences. And Rebecca was about to find that out the hard way. The clicking sound of my boots against the polished hallway floor was sharp enough to draw looks. The JAG office at Robins Air Force Base wasn't the kind of place you went unless something had gone seriously wrong. I'd been here once before for a custody briefing after Daniel's death, but that felt like another lifetime. Lieutenant Andrews, the JAG officer assigned to family and domestic cases, looked barely old enough to rent a car. Still, his handshake was firm and his expression didn't waver when I handed him the file. "Everything's in there," I said. Texts, receipts, travel itinerary, even the Facebook posts. He flipped through the pages like he'd seen 1,000 disasters before breakfast. "So your sister purchased separate tickets, didn't declare your daughter as an unaccompanied minor, and then boarded without her?" "Yes. And she texted you, quote, 'She needs to learn a lesson.' Word for word." Ax. He looked up. "Captain Monroe, what your sister did isn't just cruel. It's a criminal act. We're talking child endangerment, abandonment, and potential emotional abuse." "I figured," I said quietly. He leaned back in his chair. "I'll forward this to the state attorney's office in Atlanta. Meanwhile, You'll want to document everything she's done, no calls, no messages, no contact. Do you understand? I nodded. That part was easy. Rebecca could text me from the moon and I still wouldn't answer. As I walked out, a civilian investigator from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation was waiting in the hallway. "Captain Monroe?" he asked, flashing his badge. "Detective Ellison, we'll need your statement for the joint report." TSA already confirmed the incident was recorded on camera. I followed him to a small interview room that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. He set a digital recorder on the table. "I know this isn't easy," he said, "but I need you to walk me through everything from when your sister first offered to take your daughter up to when you arrived at the airport." For the next hour, I did exactly that. No dramatics, no tears, just the facts. I'd learned early in the military that emotion doesn't win cases, evidence does. When I finished, Ellison clicked off the recorder. "One more thing," he said. "We've got security footage from the gate. I want you to confirm it's her." "Now." He pulled up a grainy clip on his laptop. There she was, Rebecca Turner, my sister, standing in line with a latte in one hand, scrolling her phone with the other. My parents were behind her, chatting like nothing was wrong. Lily stood off to the side near the boarding gate, wiping her face with her sleeve. Rebecca glanced back once, said something to my mother, and then walked onto the jet bridge. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stared at the screen until the detective finally said, "That's your sister?" "Yes." He nodded grimly. "This will help. We'll match the timestamp to the text messages you received." When I left the office, the Georgia sun felt like it was burning through my uniform. I wasn't angry that had burned out days ago. What was left was focus. I called the school counselor, explained that Lily might need a few days at home. The woman's voice softened immediately. "We'll handle it discreetly," she said. "Give her time." I didn't mention why. I didn't have to. News like that spreads fast in small towns. That evening, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. When I answered, a calm voice said, "Captain Monroe. This is Officer Daniels from Atlanta PD. We've interviewed your sister." My stomach tightened. "And?" He hesitated. "She's interesting. Claimed she didn't abandon your daughter, just left her with airport staff to prove a point. Of." I laughed bitterly. "What point?" She said, and I quote, "Julia needs to learn she can't always run off to save the world while other people raise her kid." For a moment, I didn't say anything. I just pressed my hand to my forehead. "Ma'am," Daniels added carefully, "I've seen a lot of family messes, but this one's different. She thinks she was right. That makes her dangerous." "Yeah," I said. "I know." The next few days blurred into paperwork and calls. Child Services did a welfare check on Lily, just to close the loop. The agent was kind but blunt. "Your daughter's okay physically, but she's anxious. She doesn't trust adults right now. That's not something that goes away quickly." When they left, I found Lily sitting on the porch, coloring quietly. She looked up and asked, "Is Aunt Becky in trouble?" "Yes," I said. "She did something very wrong. Will she say sorry?" "I don't know." She went back to coloring. "Daddy would be mad at her." End of 4. I swallowed hard. Yeah, he would. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the living room surrounded by paperwork, police forms, affidavits, witness statements. My military training had taught me how to manage chaos, but this was different. This was personal. My inbox pinged. An email from Lieutenant Andrews. Subject: Update. Civil and military coordination. Body: Captain, we've confirmed jurisdiction overlap. JAG will monitor, but primary prosecution will proceed under Georgia state law. Expect subpoena within 2 weeks. It was moving fast. Too fast, maybe. But I wasn't slowing it down. The next morning, the media found out. A headline popped up on my phone. Air Force officer's child left alone at Atlanta airport. I hadn't spoken to any reporters, but someone had leaked it. Probably a relative trying to control the narrative. Rebecca called 12 times that day. I didn't pick up. She left voicemails, each one worse than the last. "Julia, you're ruining my life. And a percent. You know what this'll do to Mom and Dad? It was just a misunderstanding. You always overreact. And finally, you're not a mother, you're a soldier. That's your problem." I deleted them all. The day after, Lieutenant Andrews forwarded a scanned police document labeled Preliminary Charge Recommendation. There it was, in bold print, child endangerment, reckless abandonment. I stared at that phrase until the letters blurred. I'd spent my whole life being called reckless by my parents. The irony wasn't lost on me. The one who'd played the perfect daughter was now the defendant in a criminal case. That night, I drove back to the airport. I don't even know why. Maybe I needed to see it again, to stand where Lily had waited. The bench was still there, tucked beside a newsstand. I sat down and tried to imagine what had gone through her head, the fear, the confusion, the moment she realized no one was coming back. I closed my eyes and breathed, steady and slow. There was a faint smell of jet fuel and cleaning chemicals. Somewhere overhead, a plane roared to life. It wasn't the sound of trauma anymore. It was a reminder of movement, of purpose. When I opened my eyes, I saw my reflection in the glass wall. Uniform crisp, hair tight, eyes hard. Not broken, just awake. This wasn't going to be swept under the rug like every other family issue we'd been told to ignore. This time, there would be accountability. As I stood to leave, my phone buzzed. A new message from Lieutenant Andrews. The case has been escalated. Georgia State Police want full testimony and all digital evidence by tomorrow morning. I typed back without hesitation. I'll be there. Then I tucked my phone away, walked toward the parking garage, and didn't look back. The airport lights reflected off the wet pavement, and for the first time since it all began, the rain had stopped. I didn't plan to see Rebecca again so soon, but the investigator called 2 days later. She's willing to give a formal statement, he said. We'd like you to listen in via remote feed. Part of me wanted to say no, hearing her voice felt like reopening a wound. But another part, the one that spent years holding my tongue to keep the peace, finally wanted to hear her admit what she'd done. So I agreed. The conference room at the precinct was cold and sterile, walls humming with the kind of silence that presses on your skin. Detective Ellison set up the laptop and clicked play. The video feed flickered, showing Rebecca seated across from 2 officers. Her hair was pulled into that tight bun she wore when she wanted to look composed. She looked unbothered. Miss Turner, one officer began, can you explain, in your own words, what happened at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport last Tuesday? Rebecca folded her hands, smiling like this was an interview for a PTA position. Of course, I didn't abandon my niece. I simply left her with TSA for a moment to make a point. A point? The detective asked. Yes, my sister has neglected that child for years, always off on some mission, leaving Lily with whoever will take her. I thought maybe if Julia felt what it's like to be left behind, she'd understand what she's doing to her own kid. There it was calm, deliberate, insane. The officer blinked. You thought abandoning a minor in a public airport was a reasonable way to teach empathy? Rebecca shrugged. She's a soldier. She understands lessons the hard way. That's the only thing she respects. I could hear my pulse in my ears. She said it like she'd done me a favor. One of the detectives leaned forward. Miss Turner, did you notify airport staff or your sister before leaving the gate? I texted her, she replied, completely straight-faced. She knew. She got there. Nobody was hurt. Except the child, the detective said flatly. Rebecca's eyes flicked up, annoyed. Oh, come on. Kids cry over everything. Lily's fine. Julia's the one making a scene. The detective hit pause. You still sure you want to keep watching? Keep going, I said. He nodded and hit play again. Do you regret your decision? The second officer asked. Rebecca smiled faintly. Regret? No. I regret that she's turning this into a public circus. It's embarrassing for the family. Vit. The officer's voice dropped. You don't feel any guilt for leaving an 8-year-old alone? She hesitated for a beat, then smirked. Maybe she needed it. Maybe Julia did too. I had to step outside. The room felt too small for how loud my anger was getting. Out in the hallway, I gripped the railing until my knuckles went white. It was one thing to make a mistake. It was another to weaponize it. She wasn't sorry. She was proud. Detective Ellison came out a minute later. We're adding her statement to the report, he said. It's self-incriminating enough that the DA won't have trouble moving forward. I nodded but said nothing. My throat hurt from holding back everything I wanted to yell. When I got home, Lily was sitting on the couch watching cartoons, her knees pulled up to her chest. She looked up when I came in. Mommy, Are they still mad? No, I said softly. They're not mad anymore. She frowned. Then why do you look like that? Like what? Like when you used to call Daddy from overseas. I sat beside her, pulling her into my arms. Because some things are hard to fix, baby, but we'll be okay. Her small voice was muffled against my shoulder. Aunt Becky said you forget about me when you go to work. I took a deep breath. That's not true. When I'm gone, I count the days until I can come home. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last before I sleep. You know that, right? She nodded. I know now. It was quiet for a while. The TV played softly in the background, some cartoon with bright colors and laughter that didn't feel real. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, I went through the folder the detective sent over. It contained the transcript from Rebecca's interview, along with a statement from my parents. I didn't expect much, but still, it hurt to read. Mom, Rebecca made a poor choice, but Julia's dramatic. This could have been handled privately. Dad, Julia's career always came first. Maybe this was her sister's way of showing her what really matters. They didn't even try to hide it. I read those lines twice before closing the laptop. The kitchen felt colder suddenly. All that talk about family turns out it only applied when I kept quiet. I poured a glass of water and stood by the sink, staring out the window. Somewhere in the darkness, a train horn sounded, low and distant. It reminded me of deployments nights spent awake, wondering if home would ever feel normal again. But home wasn't what I left behind. It was what I was trying to protect. The next morning, I met with Lute Andrews and Detective Ellison at the courthouse annex. They had everything spread across a long table: photos, transcripts, bank transfers, boarding records. It looked like a war table, except the battle was my family. Captain Monroe, Andrews said, we'll need to include your sister's social media posts as supplementary evidence. The DA thinks it strengthens motive. What posts? I asked. He turned his laptop toward me. On the screen was a Facebook video, time-stamped the day of the flight. Rebecca was sitting in her car, sunglasses on, smiling like she was narrating a life coach reel. She said, sometimes people have to learn the hard way. Some lessons come with pain, but that's how growth happens. On good. I stared at the video in disbelief. She posted this the same day? An hour after leaving the airport, Ellison said. She tagged your mother. The words echoed in my head. Some lessons come with pain. It was never about Lily. It was about control, about making me pay for every time I chose duty over dinner, mission over family weekend, honor over approval. And now she'd broadcasted her cruelty for the world to see. Ellison handed me a document to sign confirmation that I'd reviewed all materials and consented to release them for prosecution. My signature looked steady on the page, though my hands were anything but. Once this is submitted, Andrews said, it's official. The state will press charges. I nodded, sliding the pen back across the table. Good. As I walked out of the building, sunlight cut across the parking lot, bright, sharp, almost too much. I blinked against it, letting the warmth sting my face. There's a strange kind of calm that comes after the worst is already done. Not peace exactly, but clarity. Rebecca thought she'd taught me a lesson. She was right, just not the one she expected. Because now I understood the one truth she never could. Family loyalty means nothing when it protects cruelty. And that's the kind of lesson you don't forget. The next morning started like every other uniform pressed, hair pinned, boots tight. Except this time, I wasn't reporting to a mission. I was walking into a meeting that could change everything. The Family Advocacy Program office sat at the far end of the base, tucked behind the childcare center. Inside, a row of flags lined the wall, and the smell of burnt coffee hung in the air like it always did in military offices. I'd been in a dozen briefings tougher than this, but I still felt the weight of every step. Lieutenant Drews was already there, talking to Major Wilson from Legal Command. She looked up when I entered. Captain Monroe, have a seat. Saturday. She glanced down at the stack of files in front of her, the airport report, Rebecca's recorded interview, the Facebook video. We've reviewed your case, she said. The Air Force is officially supporting you in civil proceedings. Family Advocacy and JAG will coordinate with the state attorney. Her tone was steady, official, but there was something else in her expression: respect. Not pity, not sympathy, Respect. Thank you, ma'am, I said quietly. Wilson nodded. You've served with distinction, Captain. You've handled loss, deployment, and single parenthood with grace. Nobody's questioning your dedication. Don't let anyone use your uniform against you. For a second, my throat tightened. I didn't expect validation from anyone, especially not from command. Then she added, We're also releasing a statement. Just facts, no commentary. But it'll make clear this wasn't neglect on your part. Understood. When I walked out, I could already feel the buzz spreading through the base. Rumors travel faster than orders in the military. By lunchtime, I had messages from 3 other single moms in uniform. Hang in there. We're behind you. Don't let them silence you. Nah. It wasn't the kind of army I'd trained with, but it was one I desperately needed. That same afternoon, the story hit national news. Air Force captain's child left alone at airport by relatives. The photo they used was from my service award 2 years earlier, the one where I was smiling beside a flag, holding Lily in my arms. Rebecca's Facebook account vanished within hours. I didn't have to check. I knew she was running scared now. The next day, I got a call from an old friend, Sergeant Cole, a logistics officer I'd worked with in Florida. Monroe, I just saw the news, he said. You good? I've been better. You know what's crazy? He said. My sister pulled some similar crap when I deployed. Family can get jealous of stability they don't have. They don't see the grind, they see the medals. I laughed under my breath. Sounds about right. Listen, you've got half the base behind you. You don't have to face this like it's another mission. Let us help. Appreciate it, Cole. Really. When we hung up, I sat in the car outside the office for a while. The idea that anyone thought what Rebecca did was justified made my stomach turn. But the truth was, in families like mine, loyalty was currency. The minute you broke the pattern, you became the enemy. Later that evening, a local reporter showed up at my house. I didn't invite her, but she was polite, professional even. Captain Monroe, I just want to confirm, your sister abandoned your child and your parents supported her actions? I didn't answer. She looked at Lily, who was sitting on the porch with her crayons, drawing an airplane. That your daughter? Yes. She looks strong, the reporter said softly. You both do. I gave her a thin smile. We have to be. That night, after I put Lily to bed, I got an email from Andrews. Subject line, Public Release, Coordination Update. Attached was the official Air Force statement. I opened it and read every line slowly. The United States Air Force confirms that Captain Julia Monroe acted responsibly and, in accordance with her parental and professional duties during the incident under investigation. The Air Force continues to support the welfare of service members and their families. That was it. Simple, factual, no spin. But it meant everything. It meant I wasn't alone. A few days later, the local DA's office called. The assistant prosecutor, a woman named Carter, had a voice like sandpaper and no patience for nonsense. Captain Monroe, I'm leading this case. I need to confirm a few details before we file charges. I met her downtown at the courthouse. She was all business, but when she saw the folder in my hands, she raised an eyebrow. You came prepared. I don't show up any other way, I said. She smirked. Military efficiency. I like that. We went over everything, the texts, the footage, the Facebook video. Carter didn't flinch once. When we finished, she said, This is solid. The defendant's statements alone establish intent. We'll push for reckless endangerment and child abandonment. It's not just about punishment, Captain. It's about precedent. Meaning? Meaning, women like you, servicewomen, single moms, get judged harsher when they can't be in 2 places at once. If we win this, it changes that conversation. I nodded, feeling that familiar surge in my chest, the one that always hit right before takeoff. As I was leaving the courthouse, my phone buzzed again. Private number. I knew it was her before I even looked. I answered. Julia. Her voice was strained, softer than before. You've gone too far. You're humiliating me. Rebecca, I said calmly. You did that yourself. You think this is justice? You think ruining my life makes you a better mother? No, I said. Being a better mother is what stopped me from walking away the day you left my kid crying in that terminal. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, short and uneven. You always think you're better than everyone. No, I said. I just stopped pretending we were the same. She hung up. The silence that followed felt like air after turbulence, still sharp but breathable. When I got home, Lily was asleep on the couch again, TV remote still in her hand. On the screen was a cartoon about a pilot and her little co-pilot. I smiled despite myself. The next morning, I reported to base for a follow-up briefing. Colonel Ramirez, my commanding officer, called me in. You holding up okay, Captain? Yes, sir. Just ready to get back to work. He nodded. That's the spirit. And for what it's worth, everyone here's proud of how you've handled this. Not everyone has the courage to face down family and still stand tall. I stood a little straighter. Thank you, sir. He smiled faintly. You know, my mother once said, blood makes you related. Respect makes you family. You've earned a lot of respect around here. As I walked out of his office, I caught sight of my reflection in the glass uniform, crisp, eyes clear, posture steady. I looked like a soldier again, not a victim. The world outside hadn't changed much, but I had. The fear was gone, replaced by resolve. Rebecca wanted me to feel small, to shrink into the quiet guilt she'd carried her whole life. But she forgot something important. I was trained to survive chaos. And this time I wasn't just surviving, I was winning. The morning I found the video, I wasn't even looking for it. I was scrolling through Rebecca's old Facebook posts, trying to print a few screenshots for the case. Most of her page was gone, deleted, hidden, sanitized. But there was one post she'd missed. It wasn't public. It was shared to a small group called Moms Who Tell It Like It Is. The video started automatically. Rebecca was in her car, sunglasses on, voice calm and confident. Some people never learn until life knocks them down. Sometimes the only way to get through to someone is to let them fall. She tilted her head, almost smiling. My sister thinks being a soldier makes her a hero. But being a mom means showing up, not just saluting from a distance. I didn't finish watching. I didn't need to. My stomach dropped, but my hands were steady. I knew what I was looking at. Intent. By 9 a.m., the file was in Lieutenant Andrews' inbox. He called me 20 minutes later. Captain, where did you get this? She posted it herself. He let out a low whistle. That's a confession wrapped in arrogance. We'll have the DA authenticate it. You just handed them the closing argument. I wasn't trying to, I said quietly. I just wanted to know why. Sometimes there's no why, Captain. Just ego. Later that day, I met with DA Carter again. Her reaction was exactly what I expected. She replayed the video 3 times, then looked at me. You realize what this means, right? This isn't just abandonment. It's premeditated humiliation. She planned it. Her tone was matter-of-fact, but the words hit hard. So she wanted to hurt me, not Lily. She wanted both, Carter said. People like that don't separate the two. She printed out a transcript, highlighted the line about letting them fall, and wrote in the margin, intent to cause psychological harm. Between this and the gate footage, we're done building the case, she said. Now we just execute. The phrase, execute the case, made it sound procedural. It wasn't. This was personal, every line of it. That night, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by papers, the video transcript, the texts, the police reports. Lily's coloring book sat next to them, half-finished pages of stars and airplanes. I stared at the 2 piles, evidence and innocence, and wondered how the hell they ended up in the same house. Lily padded into the kitchen wearing her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Mommy, are you working again? Yeah, baby. Just finishing some stuff. She climbed onto my lap, looked at the papers. Is that about Aunt Becky? I nodded. She frowned. Will she say sorry now? I don't know, sweetheart. Lily thought about it for a second, then said, when you do something bad in school, you say sorry, and then you don't do it again. Grown-ups forget that. Out of the mouths of children. I kissed her forehead. You're smarter than most grown-ups. After she went back to bed, I stared at that video again. It wasn't just Rebecca's smugness that got me, it was the certainty. The way she said it, like she believed she was doing something noble. That was the kind of self-delusion you couldn't fix with logic. The next morning, Carter emailed me the formal charge sheet. State of Georgia versus Rebecca Turner. Child endangerment. Reckless abandonment. Intentional emotional distress. It looked sterile on paper, black ink, white page, but every word was soaked in betrayal. Carter called an hour later. "We'll subpoena your sister by next week. Her license is already under review by the nursing board." "Good," I said simply. The Air Force legal office was in full coordination now. They wanted to ensure the trial didn't compromise military image. Major Wilson briefed me privately. "We'll support you, Captain, but understand this public attention cuts both ways. Handle yourself like an officer, even when they don't deserve it." "I always do," I said. The base commander later told me he'd received a call from the Pentagon's Family Policy Division. Apparently, the story had made it into an internal briefing about family vulnerability in service personnel. Bureaucracy has a way of turning real trauma into PowerPoint slides. Still, it meant the right people were watching. A week later, Andrews met me at the courthouse. He handed me a folder labeled Exhibit D, Video Evidence. "This will be shown in court," he said. "Are you ready for that?" "I've been ready since the airport." End of chapter. When the prosecution team played the video in pretrial review, the room went silent. Even the defense attorney looked uneasy. Rebecca sat at the table, hands clasped, eyes fixed forward. When her own voice filled the courtroom, "Sometimes people have to fall," her jaw clenched. Carter didn't look at her. She looked at the judge. "Your Honor, this isn't an impulsive mistake. It's a deliberate act meant to shame and harm." "Oh?" Rebecca's lawyer tried to object, claiming emotional context. Whatever that meant, the judge overruled. When it ended, Carter leaned back and whispered to me, "That's the moment the jury's going to remember." After the hearing, I stepped outside to get air. The courthouse steps were hot under the sun, but the air felt cleaner than it had in weeks. My phone buzzed another message from my mother. "This has gone far enough. You're destroying your sister's life." I didn't reply. I just scrolled down and blocked the number. When I got back to my car, I sat there for a moment, staring out the windshield. Somewhere between all the paperwork and legal language, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was tired, but it was the kind of tired that comes from climbing out of something heavy, not sinking into it. That night, Lily fell asleep in my bed. She'd had another nightmare: airports, loudspeaker voices, crying for me. I held her until her breathing slowed. The next morning, she woke up early and asked if she could draw a picture for court. "What kind of picture?" I asked. "One where you're flying and I'm on the ground waving. But I'm not sad this time." It was the kind of image that makes your throat tighten. I told her to use the big blue crayon. A few days later, Carter called again. "Rebecca's pleading not guilty," she said. "She's claiming she had temporary judgment lapse due to stress." "Stress?" I said. "She had time to edit a video, upload it, and tag my mother. That's not stress. That's a production." Carter laughed quietly. "You're good, Captain. Maybe I should hire you." "No thanks," I said. "I prefer uniforms over suits." When the call ended, I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. The case was moving fast, but it didn't feel rushed. It felt inevitable, like gravity finally working the way it should. By the end of that week, the DA's office confirmed the trial date, October 10th. The same week my husband had died. Years ago. I took that as coincidence, not omen. Justice doesn't wait for convenient timing. It just shows up when you're strong enough to face it. So, that's what I was going to do, face it, steady and unshaken, because there was no more lesson to learn. It was time to teach one. The courthouse smelled like old paper and burnt coffee, the kind of scent that clings to every government building in America. Rows of wooden benches faced the judge's bench, polished smooth by decades of people waiting for justice they didn't always get. I sat at the prosecution table, uniform pressed, posture straight, hands folded. Beside me, DA Carter was reviewing her notes. She didn't look nervous, and that steadiness helped. Across the room, Rebecca sat with her lawyer. She looked smaller than I remembered. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing a gray blazer that swallowed her shoulders. When her eyes met mine, she didn't look ashamed, just angry that I showed up. The bailiff called the courtroom to order. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Marston." Everyone stood. The judge entered, took her seat, and the sound of the gavel echoed through the room. State of Georgia versus Rebecca Turner. Case number 24-317. Counsel, are we ready to proceed? Carter rose. Ready for the prosecution, Your Honor. Rebecca's attorney, a man with the permanent frown of someone who regretted taking this client, stood, ready for the defense. The judge nodded. Proceed. Carter started calm, methodical. Your Honor, this case is not about a misunderstanding. It's about a choice, a deliberate decision by the defendant to abandon a child in a public airport and justify it as a lesson. The evidence will show intent, planning, and complete disregard for the safety of an 8-year-old girl. She turned toward the jury, her voice steady but cold. This isn't discipline. It's cruelty wrapped in self-righteousness. The defense tried a softer angle. Ladies and gentlemen, my client did not intend harm. She was overwhelmed, concerned for her niece, and made a poor choice in the heat of the moment. The jury didn't buy it, not after the video. Everyone had seen the clip by then. Rebecca's own words had done more damage than anything I could have said. When Carter played it for the court, the silence was thick enough to choke on. Rebecca's voice echoed through the speakers. Sometimes, people never learn until life knocks them down. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on the table, jaw tight, hands still. I didn't need to see her expression. I could feel it, the same arrogance she'd always had, now finally costing her something. When it ended, Carter let the silence sit for a few seconds before she spoke. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not regret. That's pride. The defense objected, but the judge overruled. Then came my turn to testify. Carter walked me through it gently, like someone who knew I'd rather be anywhere else. Captain Monroe, can you describe what happened on June 4th of this year? I took a breath. My daughter was left alone at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. I received a message from my sister that said, "Come get her. We're boarding now." When I arrived, my daughter was crying in the custody of airport security. Did you believe this was accidental? No, I said. My sister texted again, saying Lily needed to learn a lesson. That's not an accident. And what was your daughter's condition when you found her? She was terrified, I said. She thought I wasn't coming. Carter nodded. Thank you, Captain. Then it was the defense's turn. The lawyer walked up slowly, voice overly polite. Captain Monroe, you serve in the Air Force, correct? Yes. Your job requires long hours, deployments, time away from home? Yes. He adjusted his tie like he was proud of the setup. Would you say your career occasionally makes it difficult to balance motherhood? I stared at him for a beat. You're asking if I struggle with balance or if that justifies abandoning a child? He blinked. I just want to understand your relationship with your sister. You already do, I said evenly. She resented that I built a life without needing her approval. A quiet murmur rippled through the gallery. The judge didn't stop it. The defense lawyer cleared his throat. No further questions. When I stepped down from the stand, I caught Carter's small nod. It wasn't triumph, it was acknowledgement. The prosecution rested that afternoon. The defense called only one witness, Rebecca. She stood slowly, walked to the stand, and took the oath. Her voice was soft, careful. She looked at the jury like she was the one wronged. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, she began. I love my niece. I just wanted my sister to see what her choices were doing. Carter didn't even bother objecting. She wanted this on record. Rebecca continued, Julia's always been distant. She hides behind her uniform. I thought maybe if she felt scared for once, she'd realize how much Lily needs her. I do. It was impressive, in a way twisting cruelty into moral high ground. Carter stood. Miss Turner, do you believe you know what's best for your niece? Rebecca nodded. Yes. Someone has to. And you decided the best way to teach your sister was to abandon her child at one of the busiest airports in the country? Rebecca hesitated, then whispered, I left her safe. There were people around. Carter took a step closer. People you didn't know, in a public terminal, with cameras, strangers, and flights leaving every minute. She let the pause hang. You call that safe? Rebecca's jaw clenched. I didn't think. Exactly, Carter cut in. You didn't think. The judge called for order when Rebecca's lawyer jumped in, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. When closing arguments came, Carter didn't use theatrics. She just spoke like someone who'd seen this story too many times. We teach our children that love means protection, not punishment. The defendant called this a lesson. But lessons don't leave scars. They don't end in nightmares or fear. They don't involve a child crying alone while her family boards a plane. That's not a lesson, that's cruelty. The defense mumbled something about intent and family reconciliation, but even he sounded like he wanted it over. The jury went out. An hour later, they were back. On the charge of child endangerment, guilty. On the charge of reckless abandonment, guilty. I-4. Rebecca didn't move. She stared straight ahead, hands gripping the defense table. Her lawyer's mouth opened, then shut again. The judge's voice was calm, almost weary. The court sentences Rebecca Turner to 18 months suspended sentence, a fine of $7,500, and temporary revocation of her nursing license for 2 years. She is prohibited from contacting the victim or her mother. The gavel struck once. Not cheers. Not gasps. Just the sound of quiet justice landing like a long exhale. Carter turned to me. "That's it, Captain. It's done." I nodded but didn't smile. Winning didn't feel like winning. It felt like standing on a field after the storm, the air still heavy, everything around you wrecked, but the sky finally clearing. As people shuffled out, I stayed seated. Rebecca was still at the table, shoulders rigid. For a second, I almost expected her to look at me, to say something in apology, a flicker of remorse. She didn't. When I finally walked past her, she muttered under her breath, "You made me the villain." I stopped, just long enough to say, "You did that yourself." Then I left. Outside, the sun hit my face again. It was hot, bright, real. Lily was waiting at home with a drawing she'd made, a big blue airplane flying above a tiny figure waving on the ground. For once, the sky didn't feel so far away. The news traveled faster than I expected. Within 24 hours, my sister's mugshot was on every local news website, paired with headlines that sounded like gossip disguised as justice. Nurse found guilty in child abandonment case. Air Force officer's family drama ends in courtroom. Longsit. If you read the comments, which I shouldn't have but did anyway, you'd find people arguing about who was right, as if morality were something you could vote on. Half blamed Rebecca. The other half blamed me for airing family business. That's how it always goes. When a woman fights back, she's too cold. When she forgives, she's too weak. I stopped scrolling. The next morning, I made pancakes for Lily. She watched me flip them, still half asleep, hair sticking up on one side. "Are we still mad at Aunt Becky?" she asked, voice small. I poured syrup over her plate and said, "We're not mad, we're just done." She chewed quietly for a minute. "Grandma called last night. I didn't pick up." He hesitated. "That's okay. She said we hurt Aunt Becky." I sighed. Sometimes people say things because they don't want to admit they're wrong. Lily nodded slowly, as if she understood more than she should have. "I still love Grandma," she said. "Me too," I told her. Loving someone doesn't mean you have to let them hurt you. It sounded like advice for her, but it was mostly for me. By the end of the week, my parents had officially taken Rebecca's side. Mom left a voicemail saying I'd torn the family apart. Dad sent an email that read like a sermon. "Forgiveness is strength, Julia. You've forgotten that." I deleted both. The truth was, the family had been fractured long before the trial. This just made it official. I threw myself into routine early PT, long hours at the base, home by 6 for dinner with Lily. I started seeing a therapist too. Not because I couldn't cope, but because I didn't want my daughter growing up watching her mother pretend she didn't need help. The therapist, Dr. Patel, had this calm way of talking that made you accidentally honest. "You keep using military language when you talk about your sister," she said once. "You say things like attack, defend, strategy." I don't. I shrugged. "It's how my brain works." She smiled. "You were trained to control chaos. But family isn't a battlefield, Julia. You can't win a war when the other side doesn't want peace." I laughed. "Then what am I supposed to do?" "Stop fighting ghosts," she said simply. For a while, I didn't know what that meant. Then, slowly, I understood. One night, Lily came home from school with a drawing assignment titled, "My Family." I braced myself for awkward questions, but when I looked at her paper, I froze. It was a picture of just the two of us. Me in uniform, her holding a toy airplane. Above our heads, in bright marker, she'd written, "Family is who shows up." That's the moment something in me unclenched. We didn't need the approval of people who confused silence with love. We had each other. That was enough. Still, the world outside our home didn't let go so easily. Every time someone recognized me at the base commissary or on the flight line, there was that look, half admiration, half curiosity, like they were trying to figure out if I was the hero or the villain of my own story. A young airman stopped me once, nervous and sincere. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, what you did took guts. My mom went through something like that, but she never fought back." "Thank you," I said. "Sometimes the hardest thing isn't standing up, it's staying standing after you do." He nodded, eyes wide, like I'd just told him the secret to life. I smiled, but inside, I was thinking about how staying standing was still a daily effort. Lily started therapy, 2 kid sessions, crayons and sand trays. Her therapist, a soft-spoken woman with curly hair, told me she was making progress. "She's starting to draw airports again," she said. "But now, she always includes you in the picture." That sentence hit me harder than the verdict had. Months passed. The media lost interest. Rebecca moved out of state Tennessee, I think. We hadn't spoken, and I didn't plan to. Then, one afternoon in early spring, a letter came. No return address, but the handwriting was hers. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. Inside, a single page. "Julia, you got what you wanted. I hope you're happy. I've lost everything because of you. I never meant for it to go that far. Maybe one day, you'll understand." No apology, no ownership. Just the same pattern guilt wrapped in self-pity. I folded it once and dropped it straight into the trash. Lily walked in a few minutes later, holding her backpack. "You okay, Mommy?" "Yeah," I said, just taking out the trash. That night, as I tucked her in, she asked if she could visit the airbase again. "I like the planes," she said. "They sound like thunder, but they don't scare me anymore." "Sure," I told her. "We'll go this weekend." She smiled, already half asleep. "I want to be brave like you." I sat there for a long moment, brushing her hair back. She didn't know that bravery wasn't about not being afraid. It was about being terrified and doing it anyway. When Saturday came, we drove to the observation deck overlooking the runway. The sun was bright, the air buzzing with heat. A cargo jet took off, engines roaring, and Lily clapped her hands. "That one's going to help people, right?" "Yeah," I said. "It is." She squinted up at the sky. "I want to fly someday." I looked at her small, fierce, determined, and felt something settle inside me. "Then you will." We stood there, watching the plane disappear into a perfect blue sky. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the pull of the past, just the weight of the moment, light, solid, real. Back home that evening, I hung Lily's My Family drawing on the fridge. Then I added something beside it, a photo of her and me at the air show, wind blowing her hair, both of us laughing. It wasn't a victory picture. It wasn't about revenge or survival. It was about continuation. We'd been through hell, but we hadn't stayed there, and maybe that was enough redemption for both of us. It started as a quiet plan, nothing dramatic, no big announcement, just a thought that kept circling my mind like a plane waiting for clearance. Lily deserved to see what her father had loved so much, the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. The last time we were there, she was too young to remember. Now, at 10, she could understand why the sky wasn't just a backdrop to our lives, it was part of who we were. So, one Saturday, I loaded the car with snacks, maps, and one overexcited kid who'd already packed her favorite toy jet. "Are we flying, Mommy?" she asked as we pulled onto the highway. "Not this time," I said, smiling. "We're driving. Some journey deserved time." She grinned like that made it even better. The road stretched for hours, sunlight flashing across the dashboard, Lily humming to a playlist she'd made herself, mostly pop songs and the theme from Top Gun. Somewhere between Georgia and Ohio, I realized how long it had been since we'd just existed. No lawyers, no reporters, no family drama, just the sound of tires on asphalt and a small voice singing off-key beside me. When we finally reached the museum, the parking lot was almost full. A group of veterans stood near the entrance, their hats covered in patches. One of them caught sight of my base sticker on the windshield and gave a small salute. I returned it automatically, and he smiled. Inside, Lily's eyes went wide. Planes hung from the ceiling like sleeping giants. The air smelled faintly of oil and nostalgia. Wow, she whispered. Daddy used to fix these? Some of them, I said. And fly a few too. She walked slowly through the hangar, stopping to read every plaque, every caption. I watched her run her fingers along the fuselage of an old C-130, the same model her father had once worked on. It's huge, she said. How did it even get up there? With a lot of power, I told her, and trust. That word lingered in my mind longer than it should have. Trust the thing that had been broken, tested, and somehow rebuilt, one quiet day at a time. We spent hours wandering through exhibits. Lily asked about every uniform, every medal, every photo. When we reached the memorial section, she pointed at a wall covered in names. Is Daddy's name there? Yes, I said softly. Right here. She traced the engraved letters with her finger, lips moving as she sounded them out. He was brave. So are you. She looked up. Because of you? Because of both of us. We stood there for a while, just breathing. Around us, the air was filled with the faint echo of recorded voices, veterans telling stories about missions, about survival, about coming home. It didn't sound like war. It sounded like memory. Later, in the museum cafe, Lily munched on fries while I scrolled through my phone. The Air Force had just published an article about military families overcoming hardship. At the bottom, there was a line that made me pause. Integrity doesn't mean you never fall. It means you rise without losing your honor. I smiled. Maybe someone finally got it. On our way out, we stopped by the gift shop. Lily picked out a model jet and a small patch that read, Aim High. She held it up. Can you sew this on my jacket? Of course. And yours too, she added quickly. I nodded. Deal. The sun was dipping low when we got back to the car. As we drove past the museum gates, Lily leaned her head against the window and said, I think Daddy would like that we came here. He would, I said. He always said the sky's big enough for second chances. She smiled. So, we took ours? Yeah, I said quietly. We did. The drive home was peaceful. Lily dozed off halfway through, clutching her new toy plane. I kept my eyes on the horizon, that endless stretch of blue fading into orange. For once, it didn't feel like something I had to conquer. It felt like something that had forgiven me. When we pulled into the driveway, the porch light flicked on automatically. Home, real, ordinary, earned. I carried Lily inside, tucked her into bed, and went back to the kitchen. The fridge still had her drawing. Family is who shows up. Next to it, I pinned the photo we'd taken at the museum, both of us standing under the wings of a B-52, smiling like we'd outrun gravity itself. Before heading to bed, I sat on the porch for a while. The night was cool, the sky full of quiet stars. Somewhere out there, planes were cutting through the dark, thousands of people trusting each other to stay aloft. I thought about Rebecca, about the trial, the noise, the fallout, then about the silence that followed, not a void, but a clean break. She hadn't tried to contact me again, and for once, I didn't need closure from her. Some endings don't come with apologies, they come with peace. The world had moved on, so had I. A few weeks later, Lily brought home a school assignment titled, The Bravest Person I Know. I didn't see it until her teacher emailed me, asking permission to share it in the class newsletter. It started simple. My mom is brave because she never gives up, even when people are mean. She flies planes in her heart, even when she's not in the sky. She says being strong doesn't mean fighting. It means not quitting. I read it 3 times, blinking back the sting behind my eyes. I'd spent years defining bravery by action, by missions, medals, battles survived. But maybe bravery was smaller, quieter. Maybe it looked like pancakes in the morning, therapy appointments, and a kid who finally slept through the night. The next weekend, I took Lily to the airfield near base. It wasn't official duty, just a training day, but she loved watching from the fence. The sound of engines filled the air deep, rhythmic, alive. She waved at every takeoff, like she was personally cheering them on. At one point she looked up and said, You know, Mom, you don't look sad when planes fly anymore. I smiled. That's because they don't make me sad anymore. She grinned. Good. You're free now. And she was right. Not the kind of freedom you earn from a court ruling or a medal, but the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting the past. The kind that comes when you reclaim the sky not as a place to escape, but as proof you survived the fall. That night, before bed, I checked on Lily one last time. She was asleep, clutching her toy jet. I whispered, "You did learn a lesson, baby. The right one." Outside, a plane passed overhead, faint, distant, steady, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to look up. I already knew it was flying true. 2 years passed quietly, almost suspiciously so. No courtrooms, no headlines, no messages from lawyers. Just life ordinary, peaceful, unremarkable in the best way. Lily was 10 now, taller, sharper, funnier. She'd traded toy planes for sketchbooks and was obsessed with drawing uniforms. "I'm gonna join the Air Force like you," she said once. "But maybe I'll design the jets instead of flying them." "Smart move," I told her. Less turbulence. We lived in a small house near Maxwell Air Force Base now. I'd taken a new position in training command, still military, but steadier. I liked the rhythm. Early mornings, structured days, weekends that actually belonged to us. I'd even started sleeping through the night again. That's how I knew things had finally shifted. But peace is a funny thing. It sneaks up on you, makes you forget there was ever a time you had to fight for it. One morning in late October, I was going through the mail when I saw it, a plain envelope with handwriting. I recognized instantly. My pulse stumbled, but I didn't open it right away. I made coffee first, sat down at the kitchen table, stared at it like it might detonate. Then I tore it open. It wasn't long, barely half a page. "Julia, I know you don't owe me anything. I know I can't fix what I did. I just wanted you to know I finally understand why you fought so hard. I've started therapy. I lost my license, my job, and most of what I thought made me important. Maybe I needed to. I'm sorry not for getting caught, but for not loving you and Lily the way I should have. I hope she's happy. I hope you are too, Rebecca." No excuses this time. No self-pity. Just finality. I sat there for a long while, not crying, not angry, just quiet. Lily came into the kitchen, still in her pajamas. "What's that?" "Just a letter," I said, folding it shut. "From who?" "An old chapter." She gave me that look she always did when she knew I was hiding meaning behind short words. But she didn't press. She just poured herself a bowl of cereal and asked, "Are we still going to DC tomorrow?" I smiled. "Of course we are." The trip had been planned for weeks, the annual Air Force Service Awards at the Capitol. My commanding officer had nominated me for the Distinguished Service Medal for community outreach and mentorship. It wasn't about combat or heroics this time. It was about rebuilding, helping families like mine navigate chaos without losing themselves. The next morning, we caught an early flight to Washington. As the plane lifted off, Lily pressed her forehead against the window. "We're really going back up," she said, smiling. "Yeah," I said, watching the clouds stretch beneath us. "Feels different this time, doesn't it?" She nodded. "Like we're flying towards something, not away from it." She didn't realize how perfectly she'd said it. When we landed, the city was glowing with autumn gold leaves, cold wind, that electric buzz D.C. always carried. We checked into the hotel, changed, and headed to the ceremony hall near the National Mall. Rows of uniforms filled the room, medals catching light like stars. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage, feeling that strange mix of humility and pride. The general presenting the award shook my hand and said quietly, "Your story inspired a lot of us, Captain. You reminded people what integrity looks like outside the field." "Thank you, sir," I said. In the audience, Lily beamed, holding her little camera like a proud press photographer. Afterward, we stepped outside into the crisp air. The sky above the Capitol was pale blue, the kind that feels endless but calm. Lily tugged my sleeve. "Can we go see the planes again someday?" "Yeah," I said. "We'll make it a tradition." She grinned. "You think Aunt Becky will ever come see them with us?" I hesitated, then said honestly, "Maybe someday. People change when they really want to." "Do you forgive her?" she asked. I looked at her, this little girl who'd seen more betrayal than most adults, and somehow still believed in forgiveness. "I think I do," I said finally. "Not because she deserves it, but because we deserve peace." End of Fru. Lily nodded thoughtfully. "Then that's good." She reached for my hand, and we started walking down the steps together, the metal cool against my uniform. That evening, back in the hotel, I took the letter out of my bag one last time. I didn't reply, there was nothing left to say. But I folded it carefully, placed it in the drawer beside the metal, and closed it. Not out of bitterness, just closure. Later, I sat by the window, watching the planes arc over the Potomac, their lights blinking like quiet promises. I thought about Daniel, how he used to say the sky was a mirror. You can't see where you're going unless you face what's above you, he once told me. Back then, I never really understood. Now, I did. The reflection staring back wasn't a soldier broken by loss or a sister betrayed. It was someone who'd rebuilt her life from the wreckage without hardening her heart. When Lily crawled onto my lap, sleepy-eyed, she mumbled, "Daddy would be proud of us." "Yeah," I whispered. "He'd say we learned the right lesson." She smiled against my shoulder. "What lesson?" "That family isn't blood," I said softly. "It's loyalty. It's love that doesn't walk away." We sat there like that for a long time, the hum of the city below and the steady rhythm of her breathing filling the silence. The next morning, before leaving for the airport, I pinned the Aim High patch Lily had bought at the museum onto my travel bag, a small reminder of everything we'd lost and everything we'd earned back. As we boarded, Lily took the window seat again. When the plane began to taxi, she whispered, "Ready for takeoff, Captain?" I smiled. Always. The engines roared, the cabin trembled, and the world tilted upward, familiar, forgiving, free. Outside, clouds stretched open like a second chance. And somewhere between the sky and the ground, I realized something simple and certain. Some lessons are meant to hurt. The right ones teach you how to heal.